Welcome back. You're watching Insight, and today we are talking about Sri Lankan President Maithripala Sirisena's visit to India. Yeah. So you're saying that essentially, if we take a look at the support from various constituencies that Sirisena received in this election, then this visit, the symbolism of this visit, it further magnifies, given in sort of an interpretation that he has the support of many constituencies, many electing segments of the Sri Lankan population that would be in favor of Sri Lanka's shift towards India in terms of foreign policy. Sreeram, so obviously this is very high on symbolism, the choice of destination of India as the first destination where the new Sri Lankan president would go. But beyond symbolism, of course, there are various outstanding issues between the two nations. Of course, there's much reinvigoration that needs to be brought in the bilateral relations. Where do we begin? What will be the first few points of engagement between the leadership here?
With the negative energy of Rajapaksa's out of the way, there's plenty. And I think apart from the issue of justice for the minorities, which India has always been pushing, we can do so much more in terms of economic engagement and taking it to the next level. We could do, a lot of work on power and electricity sharing and these kind of issues. We could do so much to support Sri Lanka's human capital through trainings and through exchanges. I think now, it's more of a normal relationship. It was totally vitiated during the Rajapaksa's time. And so now, in a way, under Maithripala, we have an opportunity to make a comeback and to also create a more broad-based relationship. Of course, without jettisoning our concerns about the ethnic settlement and reconciliation in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So I think it's a full basket, and we need to be thinking about how we can support this new regime so that it takes root and so that in many ways it banishes that kind of viral chauvinism and viral pro-China approach that had come in the last 10 years. So now we need to, I think it's a time for us, it's an open space. And Mr. Modi must be proactive and take the bull by the horns and offer things, over and above what the Sri Lankans ask. I think this is the kind of stage where we need to show magnanimity as as the elder brother in South Asia, and everything from governance reform, even governance reform. It's so interesting. Some of the cabinet members of Sirisena have been saying we need, independent institutions and some of the reforms that he wants. A lot of it has to, take inspiration from India. An independent election commission, independent public service commission, independent judiciary, independent police, security forces which are not acting on communal lines. All these are, arenas where India has the expertise and the ability to help Sri Lanka.
Okay. But what about the outstanding issues between the two nations? I mean, the fishermen dispute, it keeps dominating the headlines every fortnight or so, if not sooner. That is one of the topmost issues that is always always under scrutiny as far as the bilateral relationship is concerned. Is that a major? Will that become a major point of engagement during this visit?
Some goodwill gestures have already led to release of imprisoned fishermen and so on. And I think this is a chance because now the bad blood with the Rajapaksas is out of the way. Vigneswaran, the northern province chief minister in Sri Lanka, has proposed joint naval patrols of Indian and Sri Lankan navies. And obviously it's a demarcation issue. And sometimes, it's become inflamed because of the politics in Tamil Nadu. But now I think, there's not much animosity towards Maithripala in Tamil Nadu, as there was during Rajapaksa's time.
Right.
So there's a kind of an air of goodwill. And we need to capitalize on this and settle these, what I consider to be not central issues. The fishermen's,
yeah, of course, it's not a major sticking point.
It's an irritant.
Yeah. And
now is a time when there is, so much goodwill in the air for us to settle this. And I think joint patrolling, joint exercises by the two militaries will also come into the play because, earlier the Chinese had been docking submarines in Colombo. Now I think it's a different era of cooperation. So it's got to be civilian as well as military cooperation that can resolve some of these old hurdles.
Okay. It's an interesting point you mentioned that. Sreeram, what do you feel about this? One is about some kind of setting up a joint licensing authority, allowing fishermen from both the countries to operate in these waters, and then this land bridge between the two nations.
Well, the objections usually come from, the hardline Sinhalese sections of Sri Lankan society who are afraid of deeper connectivity with India. Because they know that will liberalize the environment more and spread, Indian, what they consider to be nefarious Indian intervention and Indian culture and so on. So I think as long as Maithripala can manage JHU and JVP and some of these really hardline forces who are also part of his coalition, I think these are doable. There is also, if you remember, like nearly 10 years ago, there was a proposal for an undersea and oversea power transmission of a grid to be built by our NTPC and Power Grid and so on.
Okay.
And again, the talk was, for example, Madurai, our major city in Tamil Nadu, to be directly linked to Anuradhapura, which is in northern Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So that kind of linkage can be done now, I think. And as Captain is saying, now there's no real fear of militant groups or any such thing, crisscrossing and misusing connectivity. So as long as we can manage the the so-called anti-India elements, who they have been crying hoarse for the last, even though the free trade agreement benefited Sri Lanka, they've been saying it's a sellout and it's actually a giveaway to India, that kind of thing. So they will keep raising this. In fact, there is some pressure in some of the right-wing Sri Lankan media even before Maithripala arrived, not to give away any concessions, not to sign anything, don't be hasty because the Indians have a trap for you. So I think we have to overcome this. I mean, it's not a majority sentiment by any means, but these hardliners are there, and it's part of the politics, for a small island nation, which has historically felt, that is living in a larger Indian Ocean area where Tamils are the majority and Sinhalese are a minority. If you add up Tamil Nadu and northern and eastern Sri Lanka, for them, they'll play on these insecurities. But Maitri, I think he has the ability now, because of this victory, to try and manage this. And I think what India needs to do more is on the economic side, So although the trade is good, 5 billion and so on, it's mainly the deficit is in our favor. And they have not had that export capacity, So we have had some plans in the past to develop special economic zones and all these things. Because we got to incentivize Maitri to move closer to us, And at the end of the Trincomalee, there was a Sampur power, project. That's been held up for many years because Rajapaksa's time there was not much interest in it. They had all these environmental clearances and so on. Now it's time to move forward, and in many ways, the more we give, the more he is secure in this disparate coalition. I think the more he is going to do things which are in our interests.
Yeah, but which is what the hardliners in Sri Lanka are apprehensive about, which is what you said. What are the any concrete plans or indications that are coming in from the new dispensation in Sri Lanka that could actually substantiate our analysis of now Sri Lanka being able, or rather being willing to make this shift back to India? Yes,
Just
sure.
getting a comment about the Chinese, while they are faster, as the ambassador did mention, they also do a bad job in many of their infrastructure projects around the world. I've seen it in Africa, and in fact, one of their signature infrastructure projects in Sri Lanka is what they call the Narendra power project in Puttalam. Now this one has malfunctioned so badly, and they've had huge power outages over the last few years, where they've had to sign a new MOU just for the old Chinese builders who built it from the first place to come and service it. And this has been going on. So now what we are seeing is the Chinese also do a shoddy job in many of the infrastructure projects because they are after the money. Once these things are done and once the aid, and it's tied into aid, right? So they're after access. They're not so good technically at implementing projects either. So I think that's where we need to, if we can build Sampur, the other power project for which will generate 500 megawatts, and if we are more efficient, at least on a smaller scale, because Naruchola is big, it's almost like 900 or 1 gigawatt, 900 megawatts or 1 gigawatt. So in our own small way, if we can do things, in a turnkey fashion, but which will actually benefit the Sri Lankan people more. Sirisena, very interesting, he's got an agrarian background. If you study his rise in politics, all the way he has worked in rural areas. He was a village, agriculture officer, village local administrator, and he's risen all the way up. And he's very keen on promoting, irrigation, agriculture, these kind of projects. Here we have a lot of expertise, So this is where we need to be thinking about transferring skills and knowledge, training their people. So this is, we have to think about where the Chinese don't have an edge, and that is with human capital, and they can bring in the money, they can do a shoddy job, and then they can ask you for more in order to maintain these things. But we, on the other hand, will cost less, and we should do things better. And of course, a point is taken that we have been slow, but I think when we deliver, our things work, our things function, right? So we don't sell them lemons. So that's what should be India's push in Sri Lanka.
I think that very interestingly substantiates what the ambassador had once told me in the studio itself, that while the Chinese might be building ports and a lot of infrastructure, India actually enjoys a lot of goodwill there. So on that front, India need not be unnecessarily bothered about China's involvement. And now you're saying that even the infrastructure that they build is not very high quality, and eventually...
Plus one more thing. Their own newspapers had published about 3 years ago, I think, that the cost per kilometer of a Chinese rail project is at least twice that of Indian. But the reason for it is for our public sector companies go there, Con or the others, and they do the job. Chinese, they operate through private contractors there. They use them to put pressure on the government and so on. Means tipping them off, getting them, paying them something, all that put together, put into the aid basket, which has been paid back.
So even on, for example, this heavy water reactors, pressurized heavy water, there's a potential for a civilian nuclear agreement within two countries. And here we have those small scale ones which do not require expensive uranium enrichment. Our Baba Atomic Research Center has it, right? And this again has been mooted for a long time. It wasn't happening because Rajapaksa, for whatever reason, decided that he needed to cool his heels when it comes to India. But now, all these things can open up. So civilian nuclear energy, and also there's supposedly knowledge exchange on thorium research. The south coast of Sri Lanka also has thorium like we have in plenty, right? So if we can become self-sufficient in energy, for example, and build the connectivity